think we're going now. So good evening, guys. Let me adjust this camera just a little bit here. I think we're a little bit better off there. Okay. All right. So while we're waiting to get into this here real quick, let me get the disclaimers I normally get out of the way, and that is welcome to weekly live broadcast. Generally speaking, I'm here on Thursday evenings, 7 o'clock Central. Sometimes things get in the way, I can't make it, but generally 7 o'clock Central on a Thursday evening, I'm here. I'm just here to answer your guys' questions, and you guys kind of drive how the live broadcast goes. So my goal here is to respond to pretty much every comment that comes in on the live chat itself. Don't spam us with your comments. Be family friendly. Be polite. That's the only things we ask about here. You can pretty much ask me anything you want to ask. Just like I said, be polite, be family friendly, and don't be rude. We'll have to kick you out if you are. So let's get into it. So we've got, let's see, a couple of people here already. Look at that. Mark says, just checking in. Well, Mark, good to see you. And Jupiter, hello to you. Robert from Minnesota, hello. And hello to you, Armed Whale. There we go. Jennifer, good evening. And Robert says, hello from, there's two Roberts in here. That's going to get confusing, isn't it? Robert Hermson is from Richmond, Virginia. And Justin says, hey, bud, from Virginia. There's two people from Virginia. Zephin says, what age can you sell a rabbit? Well, in most places, well, that's our first question anyway, so let's get into it. So most places, at least in the United States, it is illegal to sell rabbits for less than 6 weeks. And it's not a good idea, even if it's not illegal. 6 weeks old is about the minimum age you want to wean them from their mother. That pretty much goes for most small animals. Well, not really most small animals. Most, rabbits, dogs, cats, I think, all those 6 to 8 weeks, somewhere right around in there. So with a rabbit, 6 weeks is probably the youngest you'd want to sell them. That's about the youngest they can be weaned from their mother. Hopefully that answers that question. Hello to you, Ann. Marty says, hey, Chris, how you doing? This is Marty from West Virginia. Finally got a chance to catch your channel again. Well, thank you, Marty. I appreciate that. I'm doing well, thank you. And Owen, how are you doing? Hopefully you're doing well. Adriano says, I think that's it. So hello from California. Hello to you. And Jennifer says, good evening, BGG. I don't know what that means, BGG. But anyway, good evening to you. And Mark says, hey, how many questions will there be tonight about your lights? Oh, good question. I don't know. Yeah, we do have the light available for pre-sale now. If you guys are familiar with it, the programmable solar light, it is a little bit more expensive than I wanted it to be. It's going to take, months to get here, probably in April, and you're going to have to prepay for it. But if you want to do that, you guys can let me know. We'll work that out. I'll set up, I've got a PayPal set up already. I need to go back. I put the video out Monday, I think it was, announcing that, and I'm going to kind of manage through the comments there. Got to figure out how I'm going to get your address to ship to and all that good stuff, but we'll work it out. We'll figure it out. All right, hello to you, Matthew from Kentucky, and Sillamore from North Central Arkansas. Hey, Jeff. Craig from New Zealand. Hello to you, Craig. Who's that? Evie, I think it is, from West Plains. Hey, that's not too far from me. Good evening to you. Rick says, did you pluck your chickens? I will never do it again without a chicken plucker. Oh, yeah, we hand plucked our chickens. It wasn't that bad. It was not that hard to do. We just kind of set up an assembly line. I did most of the plucking, gave it to my wife. She finished them out. It really wasn't that bad. But yeah, a plucker would make it easier for sure, but we only had 25, so I couldn't quite justify the cost of a plucker for them. And I don't know, hand plucking wasn't that bad though. All right, Brody says, I got a couple of new does. I got a California and New Zealand, and someone gave me 2 mini lop does. The lops are pretty big, and I'm going to see how big their babies grow out. Well, congratulations on the new rabbits. Where are we at here? C. Vignes from Ava, Missouri. That's pretty close to me too. Welcome. And Alpha says hello from Jamaica. That's a place I'd kind of like to visit. I've never been. Excuse me. Zephin says, can I have your number so we can chat more about rabbits? Because I just started rearing rabbits and need some advice, support from Trinidad. I'm sorry I don't give out my number because I just get bombarded with stuff and I can't keep up. I have a full-time job that I work at least probably more like 60 hours a week. And I just don't have time to be, all the time like that. But ask your questions in here the best you can. We'll get them answered as much as we can. If you're not in the Facebook group, feel free to join the Facebook group. And I'm not the best at social media, so I don't get on there very often. But there's a lot of helpful people in there that'll be more than willing to help you out. So I'm not trying to push you off here, but I can't give out my number, and I'll get bombarded with stuff I can't keep up. All right, Anna says, any tips on best eye? I think that's supposed to be nest eye. All right, so you say it's 25 days old. Eyes will not open on its own. I've been cleaning them daily. I put eye drops for pink eye I had today. Okay, well, I'm not sure what the eye drops for pink eye are. They should, I guess they'd be fine probably, as long as there's no painkillers in them. They're just antibiotic, I believe. So they probably would be okay. I don't know, honestly. What I've done with nest eye in the past is chamomile tea. I just brew that with some honey in it. Use the tea bag itself, dip it in there, and then use that to kind of clean the eyes out. And I usually get it cleared up in a couple of days, but 25 days old, it's not terribly old. You should be able to get it taken care of. But yeah, you pretty much clean it out daily. But the chamomile tea and the honey itself, they both have microbial function or properties to them, so they will help fight kind of infections, and they do a pretty good job. I've cleaned out, had them cleared up with just in a couple of days usually. That's my best bet. You might want to change out all the bedding material in the nest. At 25 days old, they should be fine to do that. Just to make sure there's not something in there that's causing that, like a lot of dust or something like that. That might help out as well. All right, hopefully that helps. Tim says, hello from Nebraska. You have got me into raising rabbits and quail. Thanks for your great videos. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Justin says, hey, I raise silver fox rabbits. Would you wait until 10 to 12 weeks for butcher if you're trying to get fur and meat, kind of right in the middle? That's a good question. Honestly, you're probably going to have to go for one or the other. Fur is one of those things where, young rabbits, and when I say young rabbits, below 8 to 10 months old, somewhere right around in there, really don't have great fur to use for anything but like craft purposes and things like that. Now, that's not saying you can't, tan it out and try to use it for other things, but you'll notice the difference in a much older rabbit as opposed to a young rabbit as to how thick their hide is and how thick their fur is. And you really want, the best fur is going to come from them when they have their winter coats. So you want them to be full grown, mature, and in the wintertime for you to get really a good hide out of them when you process them. Now, with that being said, they're not great for meat at that point, and you have to feed them out a whole lot longer. So yeah, 10 to 12 weeks is probably a good bet to try to get it kind of the best you can get of both worlds. But don't be surprised if the hide is not really the best quality for, like I said, anything but craft purposes. Now, and you're probably not going to be able to sell it. People that are buying furs want adult furs in, like I said, winter kind of coats. They want good, thick, heavy coats, and you just don't get that from a 12-week-old rabbit, unfortunately. All right, Sam says, can high calcium in feed cause pasty butt on my quail? A minimum of 2.5%, max 3.5%. I don't think that has anything to do with it. It might. Pasty butt is usually something to do with their digestive tract. Basically it's diarrhea is what it is. So it could be caused by something like that. My experience with pasty butt is it seems like a bird that gets that initially, it seems to always be a problem. So it's not it's just not something I can't really put my finger on exactly what causes that. I haven't researched it enough to know exactly what the problem is. Now, what I will tell you is 2.5% to 3.5% is awful high. It shouldn't hurt baby quail. It's fine for them. But for your older birds, they really only need about 1.5% to 2% max on the calcium. And having too much calcium can make their eggshells a little bit thicker, which means that whenever you go to incubate them, that the birds have a harder time getting out of the shells, and it can affect your hatch rates. It can also cause some kind of bone problems and things like that, but it's unlikely. It's not that high that it would cause those kinds of problems. So I don't think it has anything to do with the pasty butt that you're having problems with, but you might want to look for a feed that has a little bit lower calcium in it, just, for the rest of your birds. All right. A. Jones says, hi from northeast tip of Ohio. Well, hello to you. Barney, hello to you. He says, hey, Chris, Huge fan. I'm from the UK. I've been trying to catch a live stream for a while. It's 1 a.m. here. Thank you for all you do. I processed my rabbits recently. You have helped a lot. Or you've been a lot of help. Well, thank you, Bernie. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry. I'm 1 o'clock in the morning. Thank you for staying up late and joining the live stream with us. I know it's not convenient for everybody, but it's about the only time I have available to do it. I guess to make it more convenient for you, I could do it at, what would that, like, I don't know, probably like noon or something might be a little bit better, but I'm working at noon. I don't have those times, so. All right, Juan says, how many quail do you keep in your grow-out pens? Well, my grow-out pens are just my hutches, so they go in with my regular birds, and sometimes I'll have 30 or 40 of them in there just for a short while, though. I don't usually, they're only in there until they're, like 8 weeks old, roughly, and then I go to processing and cut it back to about a dozen or so birds to use as my breeders and things. But yeah, you can keep quite a few birds in a grow-out pen. The common wisdom on how many birds you can keep in a pen is about 1 square foot per bird if you leave about that much room, but you can actually pack it a little bit denser than that, especially if they are grow-out birds and you're going to be processing them anyway. They're only going to be full grown for a week or two, and that's it's only going to start getting crowded at that point if you have more than that. So I would say you could probably go 3 or 4 birds per square foot on a grow-out pen, and you're going to be fine. All right, Zephin says okay. I'm not sure what we're saying okay to. Oh, about the number. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that, man. I wish I could. I'd love to be able to help you guys all out, but I haven't even been good about responding to, messages that are coming in or comments that are coming in lately. I've just been so busy, but I hopefully will get back on track with that. I would love to be able to help you out more, but, that's the best I can do, unfortunately. Hey, Boris, good to see you. Hello from, this is Michael, says hello from Panama. Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for joining. Zephin wants to know if I sell rabbits, and if so, do you ship them? If you do, I'm interested in purchasing. Unfortunately, I'm not set up to really sell rabbits on a large scale. I do sell a few out of a litter here or there, but not on a regular basis, and I'm not set up to ship, so I really can't help you out with that either. I wish I could, but it's just not something I'm set up to do. All right. Adriandex says, hello, Chris. How long should you wait for the quail's last meal to process, and what about rigor mortis? That's a good question. I don't really worry about, I don't withhold feed from them whenever I go to process them. It's never found that to be a big issue, so I don't worry about that at all. As far as rigor mortis, usually 24 to 48 hours, something like that. I always put the meat in the fridge. I dry age my meat, so I put them in a bowl, a big bowl, and just let them sit in the fridge for 24 to 48 hours, usually more like 48 hours, because that's not going to hurt them at all. And that's usually enough time for the rigor mortis to pass. All right, Chris says, good evening from Minnesota. Just wanted to say thank you for all your videos. I've had rabbits for a few years now, and I learned a lot from watching your channel. It's always entertaining. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're finding the videos helpful, and thank you for watching them. All right, Micro Mansion says, my 7-month-old first-time doe kindled 10 kits. 2 hours later, I checked on them, and they were all dead in the nest box and looked bruised in areas. Help, what went wrong? Boy, that's a good question. 7-month-old first-time doe. It's possible that she trampled on them. Maybe getting in to feed them, and she's just clumsy, doesn't know what to do at this point. If you're saying they're all bruised up, that's the only thing I could really think of happening there. Boy, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know what kind of nest box she had, how he had it set up, if there could have been anything that changed on that. There's the chance of it happening again is probably pretty slim. She's probably going to do much better on her second litter, so don't give up on her. Give her another try and see how she does. But right off the top of my head, that's the only thing I can think of is that she got in to feed him maybe. Got a little bit anxious, maybe stomping around or something like that, and just ended up trampling them, and probably not intentionally. All right, Grinnin' One says, I noticed this week that my Purina Game Bird Chow now has 12.5% protein. Look for the starter blend with 30% if you're using this brand. Good point, yeah. Yeah, 12.5% is definitely too low. Now, you don't necessarily have to have really high protein. There's a lot of sources that say that they do better on a 21, 20%, somewhere right around in there. I find I use 30% protein. I find it works really well for me. That's what I use. All right. Chris says, which stink more if I keep enclosed garage, quail or rabbit? Oh boy, that's a good question. Probably the rabbits. And the reason I say that is because if you can keep the droppings dry, neither one of them smell that bad. especially quail. If they're dry, there's not much smell to it at all. If they get wet, that's a different story. Wet droppings, quail droppings when they're wet smell really, really bad, way worse than rabbits. But quail don't, urinate like rabbits do, so it's much easier to keep their droppings dry. So I would think, I think probably the rabbits are going to have more of a problem with that. So that's my thought anyway. All right, Brady says, I did end up moving the rabbits into the garage like I was talking about last stream. I do remember talking about that. Hopefully it's going well. Hopefully you're not having any problems. You got your walls protected because they're going to urinate all over them if they don't. But hopefully it's going well. All right, Miguel says, score, got out of work and got to enjoy the live broadcast for the solar fixture that you talked about on another video. By when do you need to purchase? Also, Team Coke. Yeah, well, I'm going with Pepsi tonight. I usually go with Pepsi, actually. I don't mind Coke. To me, they're not that much different. Okay, so the solar light, when do you need to purchase? I'm trying to get it done by like November 20th. And depending on how many, I don't know, I may have a few more available after that. I don't know how it's going to work out just yet. It's kind of something that the manufacturer just kind of reached out to me and said, hey, we can do this in smaller batches. It's just going to be more expensive. And I'm putting it together kind of as we go. So I'm hoping to get that done here pretty quick. I know it's not an ideal time for everybody. It's just the time I have available, unfortunately. But hopefully what this means is that we'll be able to do it again at some point in the future. So that's my goal anyway. Spencer's Acoustic says, I'm going to process my first batch of quail this week, so I need a good quail cooking video. I've done a few quail cooking videos, not enough of them, honestly, but man, you can't hardly beat them. Oh, he wants to know, if you don't make a video, then what's your favorite recipe? Okay, well, we'll tell you a couple of them anyway. Quail are, there's really not a whole lot to them but the breast. The legs have a little bit on them, just a nibble or two. So a lot of times what I'll do is I usually just take the breast off of them and save the legs. And the rest of it's just not worth saving in my opinion. And I like to cut the meat off the breast. You can do a lot of things with them. I've done quesadillas. So you just basically cut the meat off the breastbone. Just a little bit of knife work. It's a little bit tricky the first time you do it, and then after you do it once or twice, you're like, okay, that's not so hard. I figured it out. Cut it into some smaller strips. You'll probably get 2 or 3 out of each breast half. Sprinkle them with some taco seasoning. Brown them in a skillet. You don't have to cook them necessarily all the way through, but you want them, decently cooked. It doesn't take but just a couple of minutes to cook them, and then just make like you would chicken quesadillas. They do pretty well that way. Another way to do that, take half, when you cut the breast off the bone, you're going to have 2 breasts, 2 quail breasts, and stuff a piece of cheddar cheese on them, wrap them up with some bacon, brush them with some barbecue sauce, throw them in the oven until the bacon's done. That's really good too. Or one of my favorites is blue cheese, and wrap them with bacon and then brush them with like Frank's Red Hot. So they're like a hot wing kind of. A lot of times I'll take the legs and just sprinkle them with some Cavender's Greek seasoning. You can't get that everywhere. It's kind of a local thing. But any kind of Greek seasoning is going to work really well for that, or whatever seasoning you like. And then just, throw those in the oven and bake them until they're done. They don't take very long at all, about 400 degrees for probably 10-15 minutes at the most. And then they make good little snacks. But they're a little bit of work for no more meat than you get on them. But my wife likes them a lot, and I don't mind them. But yeah, I think that's a couple of good ways to do it. All right. Chris says, if quail lays a giant double yolker, will they always, or is it random and can happen to any girl anytime? Yeah, it can happen at any time. It's really more common with your birds when they first start laying. They're going to lay, or when they first start laying again after a break from winter in the spring. They tend to lay some like really small eggs, some really great big double yolk eggs, and then usually after a couple of weeks they level out and you just get normal eggs out of them. But again, anytime you can get some kind of weird egg out of them, whether it be a double yolk or a little bitty tiny egg, or an egg with no shell on it. That can happen at any time. It's just more common when they first start laying. Okay, sorry, I got a text from somebody I had to look at. All right, Zephin says, I love your informative videos. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Kitty Cat said, or Kit Kat Kitty, there we go, says, hey, my rabbit litter is starting to numb on hay. They are 2 weeks. Are they okay? to do that. No, I'm on it. Oh, they're starting to chew on the hay. Yeah, they're fine. Don't worry about it. When your rabbits get to be about 2 weeks old, they're usually going to start venturing out of the nest box quite a bit. They're going to start eating some of the mother's pellets, some of the hay, it's fine. They're perfectly all right to do that. Don't worry about it. That doesn't mean they're weaned. You can't just take them away from the mom and then give them just a steady diet of nothing but the pellets and the hay. But it's common for them to start eating some of the mother's food at that point, and it's perfectly normal. Don't worry about it. They're going to be fine. All right. Bob says, what makes or disqualifies quail or their eggs from being classified as organic? Good question. I guess it comes down to the feed. I don't know, honestly. I've never really looked into what exactly qualifies things to be organic because I don't care. But that's just my opinion on it. So I'm not sure. It would probably have to be the feed. If you're feeding them an organic feed, I guess you could consider the eggs and the quail to be organic. I don't know. Hello to you, Wesley. Where are we at here? Kit Kat Kitty also says, and what is a good size for 11 rabbit pen and or house? Honestly, I think if you're talking about housing all 11 rabbits together, you're going to want to give them quite a bit of room. I don't know exactly how much that's going to be, but I think that's a bad idea. I would house them individually. There are groups out there that house rabbits in colonies. There's Facebook groups for that. There's YouTube videos for that and stuff. I personally don't think that's really the best way to keep them. I think rabbits are not really social creatures. When you see rabbits in the wild, you don't ever see them in big groups, in herds. The rabbits live individually. They come together for breeding, that's it. And if you're housing them all together in one big area, you're going to run into territorial fights between does. You're going to run into breeding when you're not ready for it. They have a much higher chance of getting parasites and those kinds of things. So I would house them separately, and a good size cage for them, 36 by 30 inches, about 24 inches high. 18 inches high is probably plenty high enough. But you want them to be high enough for the rabbit can stand up completely on their hind legs. And 36 inches by 30 inches width and length is plenty big enough. Hopefully that answers that for you. All right, Ann says, my quail are laying really nice. Are laying really pale yolked eggs. What can I feed them to remedy this problem? They don't have access to anything but their game bird feed. I've never really had, the egg yolks I get are not super dark, but they're not super pale either. I guess, start adding in some, mealworms and things like that. That's going to help. Also, maybe some fresh vegetables and things, herbs or whatever. Just give them a little bit more natural stuff to eat, and that will help darken up the yolks probably. Good question. I don't know that anybody's ever posed that to me. Wesley says, what causes most eggs not to hatch, but a few develop to different stages of growth? 83 incubated, 9 developed. It's probably a temperature issue. That's the biggest issue. That's the most common issue, I should say, when your eggs hatch or don't hatch. So you want to check your incubator. Get a couple of thermometers. I always say get 2. Make sure they're non-digital. Make sure they can be calibrated, and calibrate them first. You'll have to look up how to calibrate a thermometer because it's not that complex, but it's too complex for me to really explain in this video here. Calibrate them, make sure they're accurate, and then put them in your incubator. And I always say get 2 so you know if those 2 are reading the same temperature, they're probably right. But if you get different temperatures from each one, then you'll know that something's off. But you've got the incubator and the 2 thermometers. So the thermometer on the incubator itself and the 2 that are inside the incubator, you can run it with no eggs in it for a little while and then check and verify. If you've got the 2 thermometers in there that you know are accurate and they're reading a certain temperature and your thermometer on your incubator is off a little bit, you'll have to adjust it a little bit to get it to the right temperature. That's probably the case, especially if you're using a styrofoam incubator like a Little Giant or a Hoverbait or any of those. They're pretty common that their thermostats are going to be off just a little bit, and just a couple of degrees one way or the other can make a big difference as to whether your birds are hatching or not, or developing to a certain state and not develop any further than that. So that's what I would check. That's probably the most common issue. The other things could be, there could be bacteria issues. There could be, there's a number of different things, but it's probably temperature. That would be my guess. All right. Oh, where are we at here? Sillamore says, Nutrina 28% protein has always worked great for me. There you go. That's probably a good feed. I'm not familiar with it, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. I've heard of it, but I've never used it, but I don't see why it wouldn't be a good one. Micro Mansion said, thank you. You're absolutely welcome. Flock and Family, hey, Chris. Hope you and your family are well. They are so far, thank you. Says, my second hatch was around 60% hatched. They're doing well. I have more eggs than I know what to do with. Yeah, I know the feeling. That does happen. Congratulations, by the way. I'm glad that things are going well for you. Barney says, fellow Pepsi enthusiast here, too. I noticed you only have cans, too. Don't you like to taste the same from bottles? I don't know. I mean, I guess bottles are okay. I tend to buy cans, and I save the aluminum, take it down to the recycle center and throw it in the recycle bins down there. I used to save it up and take it to, there was a recycle center that buys, scrap metal and things like that, but it's just not worth it because the price of scrap metal is so low right now. I take in 4 or 5 big, huge contractor bags full of cans, save them up for months and months and months and months, and then I'd get like $10 maybe, in money for the scrap metal. So I just take it down, dump about once every 2 or 3 weeks, and dump all our cans in the recycle center at the town. It doesn't cost me anything. I'm sure they get money out of it in the end, but who cares? All right, Sage and Stone Homestead says, I have 17 quail eggs in the brooder, and the humidity will be 55 in a few hours. Later, after shopping, it'll be down to 35, back up to 60 after I add water. These fluctuations bad? Not really that bad. Yeah, you're going to see whenever you add water to your incubator that the humidity is going to just shoot way up all of a sudden. I mean, that happens when you add water, and then it'll level back out. If you have a way to regulate the water amount in there, and remember, humidity is by surface volume, not depth. So if you have I've talked about this before, but let's use this can for example. If you have a bunch of water in something like this, the surface area is only on the top. So that's not going to be as much humidity as if you have the same amount of water spread out over a longer period, a longer edge, if that makes sense. So if you're having problems with humidity and it's way too low, honestly, I wouldn't worry about 55 to 60%. That's pretty good. That's about right. It gets down to 35%, maybe a little bit on the low side, but you'll want to fill up your channels in your incubator, fill up more channels to get the humidity higher, but make sure you fill them up to the top as much as you can get in them so it stays in there longer. It doesn't all evaporate away in no time. In the wintertime, for sure, the air's so dry that you're going to have a little bit more problems with keeping water in there than you would in the summertime, or at least around here, because it is so dry around here in the winter and so humid in the summertime. But no, the fluctuations are pretty normal. Humidity is not as important as temperature, and it's much harder to control humidity. So don't stress about it too much. Sounds like you're doing the right things. I wouldn't worry about it. All right. Sillamore says, hit the thumbs up for Chris. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Hot and Fresh says, I purchased a lion head bunny last month. It's pooing in clusters and it's black. Is it sick? Probably not. What that makes me think of is a cluster that's black. Yeah, it makes me think of what's that called? Cecotropes or whatever. It's a I had a video I did on this a long time ago. Why do rabbits eat their own poop? That's probably what it is. Rabbits, they don't chew their cud like other animals, like some other animals do, but in a sense they do. They'll digest up, and then they will excrete these clumps that are big black clumps that are rabbit poop, basically is what it looks like, and then they eat those. It's perfectly common, it's natural, it's good and healthy for them. In fact, it's really healthy for the baby rabbits whenever they do that. You don't usually see it because they usually take care of it before you ever see it, but sometimes you do. So that's probably what it is, unless it's just an extortionate amount. I mean, like an incredible amount of it, all the time. You might want to give her some hay or something like that. Give her some long fiber that will help clear out her digestive system. But what you're describing kind of sounds like that. I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right, Brody says, it's going great so far. I'm up to 16 rabbits and there is no smell. I clean the trays out twice a week, but it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes and I don't mind. They're in 30 by 30 stacking cages. Awesome, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's the key to keeping the smell down, really, is constant maintenance on them. You said you clean them out about twice a week. That's probably good. I have a hard time keeping up with the, I mean, I know that's not that much, but I get lazy and I have a hard time keeping up with it. And that's why I find it easier to keep them outside. All right. Eric wants to know rabbits versus quail, which is better for production for the money and square footage? Thanks and God bless. Probably quail, because you can just ramp up and down so much faster than you can with rabbits. You can incubate as many eggs as you want or as few as you want. And it's just a very quick turnaround with the quail. They don't take up nearly as much room. You don't get as much meat from them, but again, you can ramp up and have just a huge amount of them for just a short while. Whereas rabbits, you can't, I mean, you're kind of limited. You don't really have the ability to choose how many rabbits you're going to have when she gives birth. You can't just say, well, I want 10 out of this litter and only 3 out of the next. You can't do that. So that's my guess. All right, Sage says, hot and fresh, is that all poop or just some of it? They will poop. Yep, cecotropes. Yep, that's what you're talking about as well. So that's the same thing we discussed. Good point there, Sage. Thanks for joining, or thanks for your feedback on it. Mark says, I have a pen of just quail hens that have lost all their back feathers. I've never seen them be aggressive. No males in the pen. Could it be molting? Yeah, very well could be molting. That's the first thing I thought of when you said that. A lot of the times, I mean, they tend to lose most of their feathers, but sometimes it's just like on their back and sometimes on their chest. They'll just lose those feathers and then grow them back in. Since they're all doing it, they do all tend to molt at the same time. It's probably molting. If you don't have a good high protein feed like 28% or 25% or above, you might want to look at adding some additional protein during this time because they will need that extra protein to grow those feathers back in. But yeah, it's probably all it is. I wouldn't worry about it. All right. Gary B says, hi all. Last week I noted my quail had quit laying all at once. My bird have been on a light timer for about 1.5 years. Thing is, they quit crowing, hens quit chirping, and they're eating about a third of the feed. So, and you have a light on a timer with them. Sometimes they just take breaks too. So I don't know if there's any, I mean, light is the biggest reason why birds quit laying eggs. They have to have 14 hours a day of light. That's the same reason the roosters would be crowing, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times they just take a break, especially when the seasons change. So they may just be on a little bit of a break and, for whatever reason, they're just not laying eggs right now, not crowing or anything like that. It just takes a little time sometimes for them to get used to it. All right, Lamongi says, I'm raising the Flemish rabbits and the male is 5 months old and won't mate. Is it okay for this breed? Thank God bless you. God bless you for you, and hello from Brazil. Good grief, I'm having a hard time reading. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. 5 months old is a little bit young for a Flemish Giant. You usually want to wait till they're probably a little bit older. You're probably going to want to wait till they're about 8 months old, 9 months old, something like that. They grow out a little bit slower than some of the other breeds do. Most rabbits, most typical meat rabbits, New Zealand's, California's, are going to be large rabbits, but not giant rabbits. Usually they're about 6 months, but Flemish Giants, the giant rabbits, usually take a little bit longer. So it is probably that he's just not old enough yet. It's not going to hurt him to try, but if he's not breeding, I'd give him a little bit more time. All right. Chop My Food wants to know, how many rabbit eggs do you get a day? Well, none. I don't get any rabbit eggs, but Tim says, I've been thinking about butchering all my quail so I don't have to feed them all winter while not laying eggs. Is it worth keeping them in the winter? Considering how fast you can restart with them, that's subjective. That's your call. I keep a small group, about a dozen, throughout the winter. They don't really go through a whole lot of food, and it's like you said, it's easy enough to ramp back up in the spring. You could just buy new eggs in the spring if you wanted to. I don't know if it. I haven't done the math on that to figure out, does it make sense to buy, is it cheaper to actually buy eggs than it is to feed those 12 birds out over the winter? But I got to think it's cheaper to just feed them out over the winter than it is to buy, 100 eggs or whatever, whenever it comes springtime, you want to ramp back up. They don't go through a ton of feed. They go through, a dozen birds will go through a 50-pound bag in like a month and a half, something like that. So it's only for a couple of months. I'm only going through probably 3-4 bags of feed at the most. I pay, even if I'm getting expensive feed, $15 a bag. That's about $60. So I guess it's slightly cheaper to feed them out during the winter than it would be to buy, 100 eggs or anything. Lucky 13 says, shout out from Southeast Kansas. I'm looking, but I'll watch the live stream, but I'll drop my thumbs up now. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Lucky 13. Southeast Kansas may not be that far from me, depending on where you're at. All right, James says, hey, Chris, James from Northwest Florida. What can I do when eggs are too big to fit in the quail rails? Standard fits perfect. Ordered some meat maker eggs, huge. Will Scotch tape work to hold them? What to do? Boy, that's a good question. I've never had a problem with eggs falling out. I've had some that were pretty big. Depending on how many you have, you can put chicken rails in there. They'll fit in the chicken egg rails. You just won't get as many eggs in there. You don't have to use a turner either. You can just put them in the bottom of the incubator, and once or twice a day go in there and kind of roll them around with your hands a little bit, or tilt your incubator up a little bit on one side, and then switch it around how you're tilting it. You can kind of do that, but I'm not sure if I'd want to use Scotch. Well, I guess Scotch tape would probably work. I don't see why not. It's not that sticky. My concern with using tape or something like that is that it's going to be too sticky when you go to pull the eggs off the tape, that you would end up pulling shell off with it and break the egg or something like that. But Scotch tape's not that sticky, so it might work out pretty well. I don't know. I guess it's worth a try. Hot and Fresh says Sage and Stone. It was doing it a lot for the first week. Now it's pooping normal, but I'm still seeing some clusters. Yeah, it's probably, like we said, it's probably nothing to worry about. All right. Ann says chemical warmers can also disqualify quail from being organic. Maybe organic sand bass. Oh, good point. I didn't even think about that. Chemical warmers. All right. Sparks says, hey guys, how's it going? Doing well. Hopefully you are too. Let's see. Nitsuj says, I just got some quail eggs. So excited. Well, awesome. Congratulations on your new eggs. Hopefully they hatch out very well. Leo says, hi, I'm Korean. You're very handsome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Spencer says, when will egg production start to slow down for winter? Will it stop completely or just slow down? Well, it depends. If you have lights on them, you can keep them laying throughout the winter, at least most of the winter, if you give them 14 hours a day of light. So you'll have to extend the daylight, 4 hours a day or whatever, depending on where you're at. If you don't have lights on them, then yeah, they probably already stopped laying. And they will, what'll happen is they'll slow down at first and then they'll stop. But it doesn't take very long, like a week or two of going into these shorter days and things, a couple of weeks, and they're going to pretty much stop laying, and you won't get any eggs from them probably at all until springtime, until the days start getting longer again. All right. Ann says, thank you. Have taken notes. LOL. Yep, you're welcome. Callie from Canada says flax seeds will help with the yolks. No yoking, no joking. Hey, there's a good suggestion, some flax seeds. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Tommy from Northeast Mississippi, getting ready to start raising meat rabbits. Any idea for keeping rats from quail? Trapped worked well, but rather have to deal with rats. Great job you're doing. Well, thank you very much. So the trap worked well, but you'd rather have to deal with rats. I've never really had problems with rats on my quail. I guess keeping your feed put up and using like a no waste feeder and a secure cage are probably the top ways to keep rats from getting in there. I don't know that a rat could get into my cage without, some serious work, but I've never had a problem with it. So, you might look at a couple of, I don't know what you're saying. You don't want to trap them. That would be my first thought, is traps. Baited with peanut butter. that's my first instinct on it anyway. I don't know of another solution. You could put out poison for them, but that's probably not the best option either. So I don't know. But Spark says my cat does a great job and don't mess with my animals. There you go. There's a thought. If you don't have a cat, you could put a cat out there. That's a thought. I don't know. All right, Tommy says Cavender's is great on steaks also. Yeah, Cavender's is pretty good. I like it on a lot of things. Miguel wants to know what my email is. Where can we contact you? It's chris@slightlyrednecked.com. You can email me. I'm kind of slow at responding sometimes, but I'll do my best. All right, Sillamore says, I'm a cocoholic and only in cans. Plastic bottles taste nasty. All right, Chris says, if you feed Marigold petals, their egg yolks, beaks, and feet will become a gorgeous, vibrant orange color. It's also an antioxidant and helps detoxify the body when ingested. Some feeds include it. Really? Marigold petals. I didn't think they would eat marigold petals. I mean, I know, I guess they're birds. They're not like animals, but I know you can plant like marigold and things like that around your plants to kind of help keep, they deter like rabbits and things like that from getting to your plants, but I've never tried to feed it to my birds. Good thought. Spencer says, what'd you dress for Halloween as? I dressed as myself. I don't actually dress up for Halloween unless my wife talks me into it. Like she goes and buys things and puts together costumes for us. She didn't really push too hard this year. Last year she got like, she was a deer. She got little antler things and, you know, that kind of stuff. And I just wore camouflage and went as a hunter. But this year I did not dress up. It's not really my deal. I'm just not that much into it. All right, Ann says, wow, thanks so much to Chris Daly. I'll give that a go as well. Now to find some marigolds. Yeah, it may be hard to find them right now. Dora says, is it good to keep quail in the winter? Would you recommend it? Yeah, I keep them in the wintertime. I don't have any problems with it at all. They're not, I mean, they're not really real productive in the wintertime, but I don't have any problems keeping them. Oh boy, Ahmed wants to know, how do I incubate bear eggs? Yeah, good question. Spencer says, are platypus eggs safe to eat? I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know. Alex wants to know, says, remember me. I watched your videos and had 3 kits and now they're 9 months old. Awesome. I do remember you, but I can't remember specifics. I mean, I know a lot of the names in here. I see you guys come into the live broadcast and things like that, but it's hard for me to always remember specifics of what we've talked about before or anything like that. All right. Bill says, one of my quail layer a couple of eggs with no shells. Do I need to add oyster shells? Probably not. I mean, check your feed. If it's 1.5%, average calcium, then you don't need to add anything to it. It's going to be fine. Eggs with no shells are just something that happens every once in a while, unless it's like all the time on a regular basis, especially when they're much older than, like they've been laying eggs for more than just a couple of weeks, and you're getting a lot of eggs with no shells or really soft shells, and that may be an issue, but chances are it's not a big deal. All right, Connie says, come on guys, too many watching for the number of likes. Hit the like button. Well, thank you very much, Connie. I appreciate that. All right, Country Air. Hi, Chris. Got my rabbits last weekend. How often can I feed Timothy hay? Also, can you do a video on what they can and cannot eat? Thank you so much, sir. You know, I've actually talked about in videos like things you shouldn't feed your rabbits before, but boy, that's a big topic. And you know, there's a ton of things out there that they can, and there's a ton of things out there. Well, not a ton, but there's some things out there that they shouldn't eat. Just for kind of starters, well, let me answer your first question. How often can you feed Timothy hay? Give them as much hay as they want to eat. It's fine for them. So you can keep their hay feeders full all the time. You're not going to overfeed them on hay. Don't worry about it. The second part of that, what they can and can't eat. Let's see, you don't want to feed them, you know, the easy things are nightshade plants. Don't feed them nightshades. That'd be like tomatoes and peppers and potatoes, I think, fall in the nightshade. You can feed the fruit, like they can eat tomatoes, they can eat peppers, but I don't know that they will eat peppers, but they could. But you don't want to feed the plant to them, so stay away from that. Don't really want to go crazy. Don't feed lettuce, leaf lettuce, like iceberg lettuce. Don't feed that to them. That's not good for them at all. It can cause diarrhea. They can really have some serious problems with that. Darker greens, though, are fine, like kale, in moderation. Don't go overboard with that. And one thing I will say, you know, the darker greens, kale, what else falls in that? Spinach is okay. Even romaine lettuce is okay for them too. But don't go overboard with feeding them that stuff, especially if they're not on that kind of a diet right now. You really don't want to switch a rabbit's diet up. So if they've been on all pellets, don't just take the pellets away from them and start shoving all those vegetables to them. It's not good. If you want to feed your rabbits naturally, you need to transition over to that slowly. But they're gonna, those kinds of things, like most of your vegetables, are more like a treat than a steady diet. You want to feed them probably, if you want a good base to feed your rabbits and you don't want to feed pellets, you know, look at fodder. So something like barley or wheat, or those would probably be the most common and easiest to grow. Or alfalfa, you could do that too. Yeah, but you can grow fodder for them. You can use that as kind of the main diet. Feed them other things in little bits and pieces. So hopefully that kind of helps a little bit about that. I'll see what I can do, maybe put together another video on that at some point. All right, Brody says, still plan on getting quail at some point. I've been watching your quail videos. Well, thank you, Brody. I appreciate that. Danny says, what would cause a rabbit to smell? Had for 2 weeks, cage cleaned daily. I feed hay, pellets, greens every other day, fresh water. Could be a number of things. It could have something to do with what they're eating. If it's a buck, especially, a lot of times they tend to urinate on themselves. They tend to urinate on everything. Bucks can be that way, and they do have a little bit of a smell about them sometimes, a little musky kind of smell. It's just a buck. I mean, that's what they are. That's what they do. So there's not a lot of ways that you can really keep that from happening. Chris says hello, or I'm a little late, but hello from Arkansas. That's okay. We don't keep track of attendance here, and thanks for joining. All right, Corey says hello from Gletschein, Alberta. Well, hello to you, Corey. Thanks for joining. Connie says we'll try that again. Our cats keep mice at bay. They're very interested in the birds, but don't seem to bother the birds. Yep, there's a couple of votes for cats. Doria says, what animals do you have, and do I have any recommendations? What animals do I have? Well, I have rabbits, I have quail, and I have a dog. So do I have any recommendations for animals? I can't tell you what animals to raise. It's going to have to be what you want to raise, what you want to raise them for. You're going to have to kind of figure that out on your own, I guess. If you're looking for eggs and meat production, quail are great. If you want, just meat production, quail or rabbits are really good for that. If you've got a small area, if you've got a large area, you could do other things. I can't really tell you what they are. I mean, that's going to have to be your decision. All right. Cindy says, hello from South Texas. Love your channel. I just got 3 breeding quads of jumbo whites and hope to start incubating eggs soon. Use your videos for guidance. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Cindy, and congratulations on your new birds. And thanks for watching the videos. I'm glad you're finding them helpful. All right, Miguel says, my jumbo quails are savages. I found 3 dead mouse about 3 to 4 inches. Really? Well, I guess you don't need anything to keep the mice away from your birds. The birds will do it themselves. Charger says, I'm sure you've answered this many times, but what feed do you feed your rabbits, and do you use any supplements? Thanks. No, I don't use any supplements. I feed them, they get hay, Timothy hay. Most of your rabbit pellets are going to be alfalfa-based. They don't absolutely have to have hay. I do think it's probably a good idea to provide them with some hay, at least sometimes. But you could do without hay if you had to. But I get it from a local feed store, so it's not available everywhere. It's a 19% protein rabbit pellet, and they're primarily alfalfa based. That's what I feed my rabbits. All right. Becoming a Farm Girl says, hi everyone. Sorry I'm late. First live. Greetings from Maryland. I'm a townhouse homesteader looking to get quail this spring. Thanks for the videos. New to the channel. Well, thank you. And thanks for joining the live broadcast too. I appreciate that. Don't worry about being late. Like I said, we don't keep attendance here. So the fact that you're here just matters more than when you got here. Hopefully you're finding the videos helpful, and thanks for watching. All right, Dora says, where did you get your cages? What's your ratio of males and female quails? I built all my cages. So, yeah, I just built them. My ratio to male to females, I like to go 1 male, 1 rooster to every 5 hens, 4 to 5, somewhere right around in there. That's it. All right, Todd says, hey, Chris from Crete, Illinois, getting ready to wean my 6-week kits. I'm trying out your 2x4 trick. You're the man. Keep it up. I've learned a lot. Well, thank you so much, Todd. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think by the 2x4 trick, what you're saying is kind of, let's see, what did we say about 2x4? I don't know. I'm not sure if maybe not. I thought I knew what you were talking about, but maybe I don't. What is the 2x4 trick? What did I miss? What did I forget? It's probably a trick I forgot, and I got to know again. But I think what you're saying is move 2 of them off every couple of days instead of moving them all off at once. That's a lot of times how I wean mine too. All right. Or put a 2x4 piece of untreated 2x4 in the cage to give them something to chew on. That's a good option too. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Charge says, have you ever considered fodder for your rabbits? We've been growing it for about a month now, and our goats and rabbits love it. Yeah, I thought about it for a short while and then decided, no, I didn't want to mess with it. Oh, yeah. Okay, you're saying the 2x4 for the rabbits to chew. Yeah, that works out really well. Just make sure it's untreated lumber and don't use treated lumber. Emmanuel says, okay. Oh, wait. I got to go back to this. Fodder. Yeah, we've talked about, I get asked this all the time. It's just too much work. And fodder's not that much work, but it is just one more thing I got to do. It's much easier for me to go out and scoop some pellets out of a bucket and dump it in their feeder, be done with feeding them for the day. So I'm pretty busy. I don't really want to add any extra work to, keeping the rabbits. So I don't do fodder. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I know it's not that much work, but it is more work. So it's something to keep up with, and I just don't. All right, Emmanuel says, how can you best reduce quail odor in an enclosed shed without having to change manure trays daily? Oh boy, that's a good question. Again, keep it dry. Lime will help. You could sprinkle lime over it, like garden lime. That will help out quite a bit as well, but your best bet really is changing the trays, unfortunately. All right. Oh, yeah, quail. I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought we were talking about rabbits. No, I even said quail, didn't I? Okay, I'm sorry. Let me back up and talk about that then. Again, keeping them dry is the key. It's the same for rabbits. It's the same for quail. My wife's home from work. The dog's excited. Where was I going with that? So yeah, the same with rabbits or quail is keep them dry. Keep their droppings dry anyway. A fan or something like that blowing over them might help them dry out as well. But really, if you don't have water leaking or something like that, they really shouldn't be getting that wet. And dry quail droppings are not that bad. But with, if they get wet, if you have water that leaks or something like that, that's the problem. Fix that, and that will help a lot. All right. Hello to you, Harley. Good to see you. Lindsay says, I've just recently gotten into meat rabbits, and your videos have been such a big help. Been binge watching them all day. Well, thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're finding them helpful. Spencer wants to know, have I ever fed my quail microgreens like wheatgrass? No, I haven't. Nope, haven't tried it. I'm sure they'd like it. I'm sure they'd eat it. I don't see why not, but that seems like an awful lot of work for just a very little amount of food for them. Brody says, rhubarb is toxic to rabbits as well. Oh, good point. Thank you. Dora wants to know, what's my hatch rate? It varies a little bit, but I do, excuse me. I usually get, 85 to 90% hatch rate, somewhere right around in there. Sometimes I'll get a little lower, sometimes a little better, but usually around 85 to 90 is probably the average. What did I miss up here? Something probably. Okay, sorry, was reading up through there trying to figure something out. All right, AUA Sean says, hello from Aruba. Any tips on expanding my quail farm fast? Well, incubate more eggs. And just if you have multiple incubators, just you can just pile on the eggs, incubate as many eggs as you can. That's really about it. That's all I can tell you on that one. Where you at? Jay says, what's the wind rabbit year is infected? What is the wind rabbit year is infected? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm sorry, I missed that one. You're gonna have to ask that again. All right, and then I think you're having autocorrect issues or something, because you said do when you're a big USC is, I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. And then there's something in another language. It doesn't look like Spanish. And I don't speak any other languages. I don't even speak Spanish that well. But I'm sorry, Letitia, I don't know. I don't know what that means either. Sorry, I got to skip it. All right, Spencer, what's a quail's wingspan? I don't know. I've never measured it. Yeah, good question. I don't know. I've never measured a quail wingspan. I guess it would depend on the size of the bird. I don't know. Dora says humidity levels through the process. Humidity levels through the... Oh, talking about the incubation process. Humidity is not that big of a deal. I try to keep it around 50% to 60% maybe. until lockdown. And then lockdown, I do add a little bit, lockdown, I do add a little bit of water and bump it up probably around 75%. You really don't want it to be much above 80% at all, but that's it. It's not a big stress factor. It's not, in the summertime, a lot of times I don't even add water. I just let the humidity in the air take care of them. All right, Erie says, what type of quail do you keep and how many do you typically have? I keep jumbo meat makers and jumbo pharaohs, and actually they're kind of mixed together because you can't really tell the difference anyway. So really, I guess they're just jumbo pharaohs. I don't know. But I usually have, it varies a lot. If I'm in the summertime, I'll typically have like 40 or 50 birds for about 5 or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I guess. And then I'm back down to like 20 birds or something like that. I typically keep about, during the summer, breeders, about 20 birds on hand. And then I pare that down usually to about a dozen for the winter time. All right. J Farm says, what to do when your rabbit ears infected? Oh, I think you're asking about rabbit ear infections. Okay, chances are it's not an infection, it's probably ear mites. If you're seeing scabs on the insides of their ears way down inside, that's ear mites. It's probably not an infection. So the best way to treat that is to don't scrape the scabs off. Don't try to clean it out like that. Get some food grade oil, whether that be mineral oil or olive oil or vegetable oil, whatever food grade. You could eat it and you'd be okay. And just put a couple of drops in their ears with an eyedropper or an ear, like a dropper. Put a couple of drops in each ear every day until the scabs are all gone, and then every other day for another week to make sure you got them all. They're not going to like it. They're going to shake their head like crazy, but it will get rid of them. And you don't need to do anything else. Just a couple of drops in each ear, 1 or 2 drops in each ear every day till the scabs are gone. Give them a week of off and on every other day after that, and you're fine. All right, Spencer says, how costly is raising quail at the lowest? Is raising quail with a dog a good idea? Okay. I mean, it depends on how many birds you're raising as to how costly it's going to be. It's not really that expensive. How are we doing on time? Oh boy, we're getting close, aren't we? We got about 4 minutes left. All right, so it's not that costly to raise quail when you consider, price per bird or anything like that. They don't eat a ton, so it's not that expensive. Your biggest expense is going to be in building the pens and those kinds of things to start out with. But once those are all built, you're not really looking at that much of a cost. As far as keeping them, growing them, raising them with a dog, I have a dog and I have quail. It's no big problem. If you can keep your dog from besting into your quail pen and eating all your quail, it's fine. If you don't have that ability to do that, it may be a problem. It's hard to say. All right, Connie says, did not know how much work the quail were until we had 350. Yeah, that's a lot. Constantly cleaning the pans due to large poop load. Have them on screen back porch and a large shop back works well also. Hey, there's a good point. Yeah, I imagine that would work well. But yeah, if you've got 350 of them and they're in an area where you're catching all their droppings, yeah, that's going to be like multiple times a day probably cleaning out those things. But yeah, I've got them out. Their droppings just fall to the ground, so I only have to clean it up a couple times a year. But it may be different for you for sure. I don't have 350 either. All right, Rainy Day says, can tuxedo quail be feather sexed or only vent sexed? Only vent sexed on tuxedos. Really anything other than, I guess, Italian quail, you can usually tell the males tend to have more of a red head. But mostly your standard brown colors are the ones you can feather sex. Italians, I guess. Or is that Manchurians, maybe? Anyway, yeah, the tuxedos will have to be vent sexed, though. And Christopher says, my silver fox does are 6 months old. They won't breed. Are they too young or what? Yeah, you might give them a couple more weeks just to see. 6 months is kind of the average, but that doesn't mean all rabbits are ready to breed at 6 months either. So give them a couple weeks. That's probably the issue. They're probably going to start breeding anytime. All right. We're out of comments to answer, and we're right about out of time here. We got about a minute and a half, but this is probably a good time to wrap it up. Well, I got one more question coming in here. Cindy says, what do you think is better for grout pens, ground versus suspended on wire? I really think suspended on wire is better. I don't know if you're talking about rabbits or quail, but either one, because it's cleaner. They're not going to stand in their own feces and urine and those kinds of things all day long. It's also, there's a little bit less of a risk of getting parasites and some of those things if they're not in contact with the ground. So that's my thought. It's also easier to keep them away from predators too. But anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Hopefully that helps. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. We'll hopefully be on live next week as well. Thank you guys for watching. God bless each and every one of you, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.